My name is Elena, and at 35 years old, I built an $8 million tech company from absolutely nothing. I sacrificed everything to support my family who never believed in me. Then, during what should have been our celebration dinner, my father dropped a bomb. "We've given your shares to your sister. She needs them more." He smirked, adding, "You can always make money. She can't." $2 million gone. I simply replied, "Is that so?" That night, I withdrew all investment. They never saw what was coming next. If you've ever been betrayed by the very people who should have supported you most, let me know where you're watching from. Hit that like and subscribe button if you're ready to hear how I turned the greatest betrayal of my life into my greatest comeback. I grew up in a middle-class neighborhood in Seattle where the constant drizzle matched the emotional climate of our home. From my earliest memories, it was clear that my younger sister Sophia was the golden child. 3 years younger than me, she had my parents wrapped around her finger with her theatrical tears and constant need for attention. While she received endless praise for mediocre achievements, my accomplishments were met with a pat on the head and quick dismissal. My father, Richard, cycled through business ventures like most people change their socks. One month, it was imported furniture, the next, it was specialty foods. Nothing stuck because he lacked both patience and business acumen. Each failure brought financial strain and bitter complaints about how the world was rigged against him. My mother, Margaret, lived in a perpetual state of anxiety about money hoarding coupons and bargain hunting, while simultaneously indulging Sophia's every whim. "Sophia needs these dance lessons for her confidence," she would insist while buying my sister $200 shoes. Meanwhile, I wore hand-me-downs and worked babysitting jobs to buy my own school supplies. By high school, I had developed a practical approach to life. While Sophia was busy with cheerleading and dating the popular boys, I started making handcrafted jewelry and selling it to classmates and teachers. I set up a little table at local craft fairs on weekends and managed to save up $3,000 by graduation. When I proudly showed my parents my savings account statement, my father glanced at it and said, "Nice hobby, but it's time to think about a real career." College was my escape. I won a partial scholarship to study computer science at the University of Washington, working part-time at the campus IT department to cover remaining costs. Those 4 years were grueling but transformative. I discovered I had a talent for identifying inefficiencies in systems and creating elegant solutions. My professors took notice, but back home my achievements continued to be overshadowed. Computer science, my mother had questioned when I declared my major. "Wouldn't law be more stable? Your cousin Maria is doing so well at her firm." Meanwhile, as Sophia dropped out of community college after one semester claiming it wasn't her scene, my parents consoled her, blaming the professors for not recognizing her unique learning style. They paid for her to attend a series of expensive certificate programs, none of which she completed. After graduation, I landed a job at a struggling tech company called DataSync. The pay was mediocre, but the experience was invaluable. I watched the leadership make critical mistakes in product development and market positioning. During a particularly tense meeting, I realized there was a massive gap in the market for intuitive data integration software that small to medium businesses could actually afford. That night, I sketched out the initial concept for what would eventually become DataLink, my company. Excited, I shared the idea with my family over Sunday dinner. "Another tech thing?" My father waved dismissively. "Those Silicon Valley types are a dime a dozen, most of them fail." "I think it sounds complicated," my mother added. "Who would even use that?" Sophia yawned dramatically. "Boring. Anyway, I'm thinking of starting a lifestyle blog. Can I borrow $500 for a camera?" Despite their reaction, the seed had been planted. I kept my job at DataSync for another year, working nights and weekends to develop my business plan and build a prototype. I lived on ramen and coffee, saving every penny for what I knew would be a leap into the unknown. My colleagues thought I was crazy when I started declining happy hour invitations, but I had a vision that kept me going when exhaustion set in. Meanwhile, Sophia bounced from boyfriend to boyfriend, each relationship ending in dramatic fashion with my parents picking up the pieces. They paid her rent when she couldn't cover her credit card bills and offered endless emotional support when she announced her engagement to a guy she'd known for 3 months. My parents threw an extravagant party spending money they didn't have. 6 months later, when the relationship inevitably imploded, they covered those costs too. I watched all of this from the sidelines, promising myself that one day I would build something so successful that financial insecurity would never plague our family again, despite everything. I loved them and wanted to give them the stability my father's failed ventures never could. I just never imagined that the very success I created to help them would become the thing they would try to take from me. Quitting my stable job at DataSync felt like stepping off a cliff. I had saved $30,000, enough runway for 6 months if I lived extremely frugally. The day I handed in my resignation, my boss looked at me with a mixture of concern and admiration. "You're really doing this, huh?" he said. "Well, when you're ready to come back, there'll be a place for you." I thanked him, but knew in my heart I would never return. Failure wasn't an option I allowed myself to consider. My apartment became my office. I cleared out my second bedroom, installed a whiteboard wall, and set up a desk I'd found on clearance. For the first 3 months, I worked 16 to 18 hours a day refining my business plan and developing a functional prototype of DataLink. My social life evaporated. Friends stopped calling after I declined their invitations too many times. Dating became a distant memory. My entire world narrowed to code market research and endless cups of coffee. Finding investors proved to be my first major hurdle. I approached 27 venture capital firms and received 27 rejections. Most didn't even give me the courtesy of a meeting. Those who did seemed more interested in checking their watches than listening to my pitch. "The market's too niche," one told me. "Without a track record, this is too risky," said another. "Come back when you have some actual users," a third suggested. Each rejection stung but also fueled my determination. I revised my pitch, tightened my prototype, and kept pushing. By month 4, my savings were dwindling dangerously. I started taking freelance coding jobs on the side just to keep the lights on, sleeping just 4 hours a night to maintain progress on DataLink. Then came a breakthrough at a tech networking event I'd almost been too exhausted to attend. I met Laura, an angel investor, who had built and sold 2 successful software companies. Unlike the others, she asked insightful questions about my solution and understood the market need immediately. "I've experienced this pain point personally," she said. "If you can actually deliver on what you're describing, you've got something." 2 weeks and 4 intense meetings later, Laura invested $150,000 for a 10% stake in DataLink. It wasn't the millions some startups secured, but it was enough to give me breathing room and validation that someone believed in my vision. When I told my family about securing my first investment, my father shrugged. "Those tech investors throw money at everything these days." "Don't get too excited," my mother worried. "Don't these investors take advantage of people? Make sure you read the fine print." Sophia rolled her eyes. "Must be nice to have people just hand you money." Their reactions hurt, but I was used to it by then. With Laura's investment, I rented a small office space and hired my first 2 employees. Alex, a brilliant developer I'd worked with at DataSync, and Emily, a marketing specialist with experience in the B2B software space. Both took pay cuts to join me, believing in the vision enough to take the risk. The first year was brutal. We encountered countless technical challenges that required late nights and complete code rewrites. There were weeks when I slept under my desk rather than waste time commuting home. My health suffered. I lost 15 lbs, developed insomnia, and caught every cold that circulated through Seattle. But slowly, painfully, DataLink took shape. 9 months in, we secured our first major client, a regional healthcare provider struggling with data integration. Their IT director took a chance on us after a larger competitor quoted them an astronomical price. We delivered the implementation on time and under budget. Their glowing testimonial became our golden ticket. Word began to spread. 3 more clients signed on within weeks. Revenue started trickling in. We hired 2 more people. The office began to feel crowded in the best possible way. Despite our growing success, I continued living as frugally as possible, pouring every spare dollar back into the company. While my employees received competitive salaries, I paid myself just enough to cover basic expenses. My wardrobe consisted of jeans and company t-shirts. My 10-year-old car made concerning noises but got me where I needed to go. Meanwhile, my family's financial needs seemed endless. When my parents' furnace died in the middle of winter, I paid $4,000 for a replacement without hesitation. When Sophia got divorced from her second husband after just 18 months, leaving her with 2 young children and no income, I covered her rent for 6 months and paid for her retraining as a medical office assistant. Each time I helped, the gratitude was fleeting at best. My father would make comments about how tech money isn't real money, or how I was lucky to be in a booming industry. My mother would accept help but then question my choices about everything from my hair to my lack of a relationship. Sophia would take what was offered and then ask for more, as if my resources were limitless. Still, I persisted. I told myself that once the company truly succeeded, once we reached a level of security and prosperity that couldn't be denied, they would finally see me. They would finally be proud. They would finally understand the sacrifices I had made for all of us, how wrong I was. 3 years after launching Datalink, we hit a milestone that once seemed impossible: $1 million in annual revenue. Our team had grown to 15 people, and we'd moved to a proper office in downtown Seattle with views of Elliott Bay. Industry publications began featuring us in articles about promising startups. I was invited to speak at conferences and join panels about women in tech. The external validation was intoxicating after years of struggling for recognition. When Tech Forward magazine named me one of their entrepreneurs to watch, I framed the article and brought it to my parents' house, hoping this tangible proof of success might finally impress them. My father glanced at it and said, "These magazines need to fill pages somehow. Don't let it go to your head." My mother was more concerned about the photo accompanying the article. "Couldn't you have worn something nicer and done something with your hair?" Only my niece and nephew showed genuine excitement, thinking it was cool that Aunt Elena was in a magazine. Their innocent pride meant more to me than they could know. Despite these disappointments, I continued trying to share my success with my family in ways they might appreciate. When Datalink expanded to international markets, securing clients in Canada, the UK, and Australia, I used some of the profits to buy my parents a new home. It wasn't a mansion, but it was in a nice neighborhood with good schools for Sophia's kids, who often stayed with my parents while Sophia figured things out. The day they moved in, my father walked through the house pointing out all the things he would have done differently if he'd built it himself. My mother worried about the higher property taxes. Sophia immediately claimed the largest guest room as her space for when she needed breaks from parenting. Not once did anyone say thank you. I also paid for my niece and nephew to attend the best private school in the area. Education had been my ladder up, and I wanted them to have every advantage. When their teachers praised their aptitude and potential, I felt a deep satisfaction that my success could create opportunities for the next generation. Sophia, however, seemed to resent my involvement in her children's lives. They come home talking about Aunt Elena this, Aunt Elena, that, she complained. "I'm their mother, not you." The more Datalink grew, the more my family's demands increased. My parents began taking luxury cruises, calling me from ports to ask for extra spending money when they blew through their budgets. Sophia upgraded to a larger apartment, expecting me to cover the difference in rent. Family dinners became tense affairs where my achievements were downplayed while their financial emergencies took center stage. By our 5th year, Datalink's valuation reached $8 million. We had 40 employees' offices in 3 cities, and a client list that included names even my parents recognized: Venture capital firms that had once rejected me now sent emails asking if I was interested in additional funding rounds. Two larger companies approached with acquisition offers, which I politely declined. This was my creation, and I wasn't ready to give up control. It was around this time that I made a decision I would later regret bitterly. In an effort to create lasting family security and perhaps finally win their respect, I restructured the company to give my parents and Sophia minority shares. My parents received 5% each, and Sophia received 3%. I retained 52% with the remaining 35% distributed among investors and key employees. This way you'll have income from dividends for life, I explained as I presented them with the legal documents. And if we ever sell or go public, these shares will be worth significant money. For once, they seemed impressed, though they clearly didn't understand the full value of what they'd received. I took time to explain basic business concepts to them, particularly to Sophia, hoping she might develop an interest in what I'd built. I invited her to shadow me at work, introduced her to my team, and tried to mentor her on financial management. Her interest lasted approximately 2 weeks before she declared it too boring and stopped showing up. Still, I hoped the ownership stake would give them all a sense of connection to my work and pride in what we were accomplishing together. With DataLink thriving and a major new product release generating buzz in the industry, I decided it was time to celebrate properly. I planned a family dinner at Canlis, Seattle's most exclusive restaurant, where I would share news about our latest valuation and growth projections. I reserved a private dining room, ordered champagne, and even bought a new dress for the occasion. For once, I allowed myself to imagine a perfect evening. My family finally recognizing my hard work, toasting to our shared success, perhaps even expressing pride in what I had accomplished. After all the sacrifices, all the support I'd provided, surely they could give me this one night of appreciation. I had no idea I was walking into an ambush. The evening started pleasantly enough. Canlis sits perched above Lake Union, its wall of windows offering spectacular views of the water and Seattle skyline. As our town car pulled up to the entrance, I felt a rare moment of optimism about the night ahead. My parents had dressed for the occasion, my father in a suit I'd bought him last Christmas, my mother in a navy dress that complemented her silver hair. Even Sophia made an effort, wearing a cocktail dress and leaving her children with a sitter for the evening. As we were escorted to our private dining room, the maitre d' addressed me by name, adding to the sense of occasion. "Miss Wilson, it's a pleasure to have you and your family with us tonight. Your table is ready." Once seated, I ordered champagne for the table and watched as the server poured 4 flutes of golden bubbles. I raised my glass for a toast. To family, I said, and to celebrating success together. They clinked glasses with me, but I noticed something odd in their expressions. My father seemed almost smug, exchanging glances with my mother. Sophia couldn't quite meet my eyes. I dismissed my unease, attributing it to my perpetual hope for their approval always being tinged with anxiety. As we moved through the exquisite 5-course meal, I shared updates about DataLink's latest achievements. Our newest data integration module had exceeded sales projections by 70%. We'd been featured in Forbes. Microsoft had approached us about a potential partnership. "That's why I wanted us to gather tonight," I explained as dessert was served. DataLink has officially reached an $8 million valuation. The shares I gave you last year have more than doubled in value. We're on track to hit $12 million by next quarter. I paused, waiting for their reaction. This was the moment I'd been working toward for years. Validation, recognition, perhaps even pride. Instead, my father cleared his throat and glanced at my mother, who nodded slightly. "That's actually good timing, Elena," he said, using the formal version of my name he only employed when being serious. "We have some news of our own." He reached into his jacket pocket and pulled out a folded document, sliding it across the table toward me. "What's this?" I asked, leaving it untouched. "We've made some changes to the company's shareholding structure." He continued, his voice businesslike. We've given your shares to your sister. She needs them more than you do. The room seemed to tilt sideways. I must have misheard him. What are you talking about? You can't give my shares to anyone. You only have 10% between you. My father's expression hardened. Not your 52%, our 10% plus the 3% Sophia already had. We've transferred it all to her name, 13% total. I struggled to process his words. They had given Sophia their shares, worth nearly $1 million combined. Why would you do that? I managed to ask, my voice sounding distant to my own ears. My father leaned back in his chair, a small smirk playing at the corner of his mouth, the same expression he'd worn when winning at poker with his friends. Sophia has the kids to think about. She's struggling as a single mother. You're single. No responsibilities. Besides, and here, his smirk widened, you can always make more money. She can't. My hands began to shake under the table. I pressed them against my thighs to steady them. 13% of Datalink worth over $1 million at current valuation just handed to Sophia. The same Sophia who couldn't be bothered to learn the first thing about the company, who had never worked a day in the business, who had mocked my dedication and sacrifice for years. I looked at my sister expecting perhaps a hint of shame, or at least gratitude. Instead, she wore an expression of entitlement, examining her manicure as if bored by the conversation. "It's only fair," she said, finally meeting my gaze. "You've always had it easier than me. Things just come naturally to you." My mother reached across the table as if to pat my hand, but I pulled away. "Darling, you're so capable," she said, her tone conciliatory. "You'll be fine. Sophia really needs this security for her future." I looked at each of their faces in turn, these people I had supported and protected and provided for. In that moment, I saw them clearly, perhaps for the first time. This wasn't a misunderstanding or a poorly thought-out decision. This was calculated. They had planned this, coordinating among themselves, bringing legal documents to what was supposed to be a celebration. The betrayal was so complete, so perfectly orchestrated, that a strange calm settled over me. My racing heart slowed, my shaking hands stilled. I looked my father directly in the eye. "Is that so?" I said quietly. He seemed taken aback by my composed response, perhaps expecting tears or arguments. "Yes," he replied, less certain now. "That's so." I carefully folded my napkin and placed it beside my half-eaten chocolate soufflé. I reached for my purse and stood up. "Enjoy the rest of your evening. The bill has been taken care of." "You're leaving?" my mother asked, surprised. "But we haven't even discussed the next steps." "There's nothing to discuss," I replied. "You've made your decision." I walked out of Canlis with my back straight and my head high, not allowing myself to break until I was safely in the back of my waiting car. Only then did I let the tears come hot and silent as the Seattle skyline blurred outside my window. That night, I didn't sleep. Instead, I reviewed every company document, every contract, every bylaw. As the founder and majority shareholder, I had built-in protections. Most of them didn't even know existed. By dawn, I had a plan. I logged into our banking system and transferred all of my personal investment capital out of the company accounts. $800,000 I had kept liquid for our next expansion phase. Not company money, but my own capital I had made available, mine to withdraw. That was just the beginning. The next morning, I arrived at the office early before any of my team. I needed privacy for what came next. My eyes were gritty from lack of sleep, but my mind was clearer than it had been in years. Sometimes betrayal burns away the fog of denial. My first call was to Rebecca Thompson, the corporate attorney who had helped me structure Datalink from its inception. I reached her at home before her workday began. "Rebecca, I need to see you immediately. It's an emergency." To her credit, she didn't ask questions over the phone. "I'll meet you at your office in 30 minutes. While waiting, I pulled up all the shareholder agreements and founding documents. When Rebecca arrived, her expression serious beneath her silver-framed glasses, I laid out exactly what had happened at dinner. They've transferred all their shares to my sister, I concluded. 13% of the company worth over $1 million. I need to know my options. Rebecca reviewed the documents methodically, her expression revealing nothing. Finally, she looked up. There's something here they clearly didn't understand, she said, pointing to Section 14.3 of our shareholder agreement. You included a founder's protection clause that gives you right of first refusal on any share transfers. They can't legally transfer shares to anyone without offering them to you first at fair market value. A small flame of hope kindled in my chest. So the transfer isn't valid. It's contestable at minimum. There's also this, she continued, flipping to another section. The minority shareholder agreement they signed includes a loyalty clause. If they act against the company's interest, their shares can be purchased back at a discounted valuation. Rebecca spent the next 3 hours outlining a strategy. By the time my team began arriving for work, I had a clear path forward. I instructed my assistant to cancel my meetings and spent the morning making calls to our investors. They needed to hear about the situation from me before rumors started. Laura, my first investor and now a close friend, was particularly supportive. Family businesses are complicated, she said, but you've built something too valuable to be derailed by this. What's your plan? I explained the legal strategy Rebecca had developed and my intention to restructure the company to protect it from further family interference. Smart, Laura approved. Do you need additional capital to buy them out? Possibly, I admitted. I've withdrawn my personal investment for now to protect it, but I may need liquidity for the share repurchase. Count me in, she said without hesitation, and I'll reach out to the other major investors. We're behind you on this. By noon, my phone began blowing up with calls and texts from my family. I instructed my assistant to tell them I was in meetings all day. I needed time to implement the first phase of my plan before engaging with them. Sophia was the most persistent, leaving increasingly angry voicemails. What the hell did you do? Her first message demanded. The bank says there's a hold on the dividend payments. Call me back immediately. Her next message was more frantic. The lawyer Dad hired says there's some problem with the share transfer. Fix this, Elena. You're being ridiculous. By her fifth call, she was nearly hysterical. This is so typical of you. Always thinking you're better than everyone else. Those shares are mine now, and you can't change that. I listened to each message, impassively saving them as evidence of her intentions. It was becoming clear that Sophia had planned to start drawing immediate dividends without any interest in the company's operations or future. My parents' messages were more measured but equally revealing. Elena, this behavior is very disappointing. My father's voice intoned. Family supports family. Your sister needs this opportunity. You've had plenty of advantages in life. My mother tried a different approach. Darling, we're worried about you. This reaction isn't healthy. Why don't you come over for dinner tonight so we can discuss this like adults? I saved these messages too, noting the manipulation tactics they employed, disappointment, guilt, concern, tools they had used to control me my entire life. Late that afternoon, Rebecca returned with additional findings. She had discovered something troubling in the company's financial audit trail. Someone accessed financial reports they shouldn't have, she explained, showing me the system logs. Detailed valuation data acquisition offers future projections. All accessed using your father's login credentials, but at times when he was supposedly on a cruise with your mother, Sophia, I realized she must have used his credentials. That's my guess. Rebecca agreed. And there's more. I had my assistant do some background checking. Your sister has been meeting with Gregory Warner. The name hit me like a physical blow. Gregory Warner ran a venture capital firm that had tried to acquire Datalink the previous year. I had declined their offer because they were known for gutting companies, stripping their assets, and discarding their employees. She's planning to sell her shares to Warner, I concluded, or use them to help him gain board influence. It looks that way, Rebecca confirmed. And based on these access logs, she's been planning this for at least 4 months. The betrayal ran deeper than I had imagined. This wasn't a sudden decision made out of financial need. This was a calculated move months in the making. I had to confront them. That evening, I called a family meeting at my condominium. I chose my territory deliberately, wanting them off balance. When they arrived, I had Rebecca present as well, sitting quietly in the corner with her legal pad. "Who's she?" my father demanded immediately. "My attorney," I replied calmly. "Given that this is now a legal matter, I thought it prudent to have representation." "Legal matter?" My mother echoed, her hand fluttering to her throat. "Elena, we're family. We don't need lawyers to talk to each other." "Apparently we do," I countered, "since you brought legal documents to our dinner last night without warning me." I gestured for them to sit on the sofa while I remained standing. Power dynamics matter in confrontations like these. I know everything I began. I know Sophia has been accessing company financial data using Dad's credentials for months. I know she's been meeting with Gregory Warner, planning to either sell her shares to him or help him gain influence over Datalink. Sophia's face drained of color. My father shifted uncomfortably. My mother looked confused. "I don't know what you're talking about," Sophia attempted, but her voice lacked conviction. Section 14.3 of the Shareholder Agreement. I continued as if she hadn't spoken, gives me right of first refusal on any share transfers. The transfer you attempted last night isn't valid. Additionally, your actions constitute a breach of the loyalty clause, which means those shares can be repurchased at a significant discount. My father leaned forward, anger replacing his discomfort. "Now you listen here." "No, you listen." I interrupted, my voice level but firm. "For years, I've supported this family financially. I've paid for homes, education, emergencies, vacations. I gave you shares in my company as a gift to provide you with long-term security. And this is how you repay that generosity, by conspiring behind my back to hand those shares to Sophia so she can sell them to a corporate raider." The room fell silent. Then my mother spoke, her voice small. "We didn't know about Gregory Warner. Sophia told us she wanted the shares for her children's future." I turned to my sister. "Is that true? Tell them what you really plan to do?" Sophia crossed her arms defensively. "Fine. Yes. I was going to sell some of the shares. I need cash now, not some future payout that might never come." "And the rest?" I pressed. She glared at me. "Warner said I could have a position on the board if I helped him gain influence, a real job with prestige, something Mom and Dad could actually be proud of." My father looked between us, confusion evident on his face. "What does this Warner character want with the company? To strip it for parts," I explained bluntly. "Fire most of the employees, sell off the intellectual property, and shut it down. That's his business model. But that would destroy everything you've built." My mother said, seemingly genuinely shocked. Yes, I agreed. It would. The reality of the situation finally seemed to dawn on my father. There must be some misunderstanding. We were just trying to help Sophia. We didn't know about any of this other business. I wasn't sure I believed him, but it didn't matter. The damage was done. "There's something else you should know," I added. "Dad, those gambling debts you've been hiding from Mom, the ones you've been paying off with company dividends, I know about those too." My mother gasped, turning to her husband of 40 years. "Richard, what gambling debts?" His face reddened. "It's nothing. Just a little poker with the boys. $30,000 isn't nothing," I countered. "That's what you've withdrawn from your account over the past year. Always in cash, always the day after your Thursday golf games that somehow never result in a tan." The secrets were unraveling now. Years of deception exposed to the harsh light of truth. My mother began to cry. Sophia stared at the floor. My father's shoulders slumped in defeat. "Here's what happens next," I said, placing a folder on the coffee table. "These documents reverse the share transfer and initiate a company buyback of all family-held shares at 80% of market value. You can sign them now, or we can take this to court. Your choice." "You would sue your own family?" my father asked incredulously. You would steal from your own daughter, I countered. In the heavy silence that followed, I knew I had won this battle. But the war had cost me something precious that could never be recovered. The illusion that somewhere beneath their flaws, my family truly loved me. The following Monday, I called an emergency board meeting. Our investors flew in from across the country, concerned about the family drama threatening their investment. I had spent the weekend preparing a detailed presentation outlining exactly what had happened and my proposed solution. As board members and key investors filed into our conference room, I stood at the head of the table dressed in my most professional attire, projecting a calm I didn't entirely feel. Laura gave me a reassuring nod as she took her seat. Thank you all for coming on such short notice. I began once everyone was settled. I've called this meeting to address a situation that potentially threatens Datalink's stability and future growth. Over the next 30 minutes, I methodically laid out the facts: the attempted share transfer, Sophia's meetings with Gregory Warner, the evidence of her accessing confidential company information, and my parents' participation in the scheme. I presented everything factually without emotion, as if discussing any other business challenge. In light of these events, I concluded I'm proposing a restructuring of company ownership to prevent future attempts at hostile influence. I outlined a plan to buy back all family-held shares and redistribute a portion to key employees through an equity incentive program. The remainder would be held in a company treasury for future strategic use. Additionally, I continued, I've drafted amendments to our company bylaws strengthening protections against hostile actions. Rebecca will distribute those documents for your review. When I finished, the room was silent for a moment. Then, Martin Chen, one of our early investors, spoke. I've seen family businesses destroyed by exactly this kind of drama, he said gravely. Your plan is sound, Elena. You have my support. One by one, the other board members and investors voiced their agreement. The vote to approve my proposals was unanimous. As the meeting concluded, Laura stayed behind while the others filed out. Are you okay? She asked quietly. Really? Okay. For the first time since the betrayal, I allowed my professional mask to slip slightly. No, I admitted. But I will be. She squeezed my shoulder. You're doing the right thing. Sometimes the hardest decisions are the ones that protect what we've built. With the board's approval secured, I moved quickly to implement the restructuring. Rebecca filed the necessary legal documents to invalidate the share transfer to Sophia and initiated the buyback process. I instructed our finance team to prepare the funds for the transaction. That afternoon, Sophia called in a panic. Warner is furious, she blurted without preamble. He says the shares are worthless now. He's threatening to sue me for wasting his time. That sounds like a personal problem, I replied evenly. You have to help me, she demanded. This is your fault. My fault that you tried to sell shares you had no right to in the first place. My fault that you conspired with a corporate raider to undermine the company I built. That's an interesting perspective. What am I supposed to do now? Her voice cracked with genuine fear. For a moment, I felt a flicker of the old protectiveness. Then I remembered her smug expression at Canlis, her entitlement, her willingness to destroy everything I had built for a quick payout and a prestigious title. You're an adult, Sophia. Figure it out. I ended the call and turned my attention back to saving my company. The share buyback was completed within 10 days. My family received just over $800,000 collectively, a substantial sum, but less than the full market value of the shares due to the loyalty clause violation. I made sure the funds were placed in escrow accounts with separate trusts established for my niece and nephew to fund their education. Sophia would not have direct access to that money. With the immediate threat neutralized, I focused on reinforcing Datalink against future vulnerabilities. I implemented new security protocols limiting access to sensitive financial data. I restructured the board, bringing in 2 independent directors with strong tech backgrounds, and I created an employee ownership program giving key team members a stake in the company's success. The changes were well received internally. My employees, many of whom had been with me since the early days, rallied around me during this difficult period. Alex, my first hire and now CTO, organized a team dinner where each person shared stories of why they believed in Datalink and its mission. "We're not just colleagues," he told me as the evening wound down. "We're family, the kind that actually supports each other." His words touched me deeply, highlighting the contrast between the family I was born into and the one I had built around me. The media eventually caught wind of the family drama, particularly after Sophia attempted to give an interview to a local business journal portraying herself as the victim. The journalist fortunately reached out to me for comment, allowing me to provide documentation disproving her claims. The story was ultimately shelved. As the weeks passed, the dust began to settle. Datalink continued to thrive, securing 3 major new clients and finalizing the Microsoft partnership. Our valuation climbed to $10 million, then 12. The company was stronger than ever. My family, meanwhile, faced the consequences of their actions. My father's gambling debts came fully to light, forcing my parents to downsize from the home I had bought them. My mother, finally confronting the financial realities my father had hidden from her for years, took control of their finances for the first time in their marriage. Sophia, unable to deliver what she had promised, Warner found herself shunned in the business community she had so desperately wanted to join. The money from the share buyback, minus what was secured for her children's education, disappeared quickly on luxury purchases and ill-advised investments. 3 months after the canless dinner, she showed up at my condo unannounced, looking considerably less polished than the last time I'd seen her. "I need help," she admitted, eyes downcast. "I've made some mistakes." "Yes," I agreed. "You have." "The money's gone," she continued. "I can't make rent next month. Your children's education is secured." I informed her. "I established trusts with their portion of the buyout funds." Relief flooded her face. "Thank you. But what about me? I don't know what to do." I studied my sister, this person who shared my blood but had never shown me the loyalty or support that should come with family. In her features I could see echoes of my own, yet our paths had diverged so dramatically. "I won't give you money," I said finally, "but I can offer you something more valuable if you're willing to accept it." "What?" she asked wearily. "Accountability, responsibility, the chance to earn what you receive, rather than having it handed to you." I explained that one of our client companies was hiring for an entry-level administrative position. The pay was modest but fair, with potential for advancement for those who demonstrated commitment and reliability. "I can recommend you for an interview," I offered. "After that, it's up to you to prove your worth." Sophia's first instinct was clearly to refuse. I could see the resistance in her expression, the entitlement that had been nurtured her entire life, but desperation won out. "Fine," she conceded. "I'll take the interview." Whether she would actually follow through remained to be seen. I had done what I could, offered a hand up rather than a handout. The rest was her choice. As for my parents, our relationship had shifted irrevocably. They had attempted reconciliation several times, inviting me to dinners and sending cards on my birthday, but the trust was broken beyond repair. I maintained minimal contact primarily to have access to my niece and nephew, but the closeness I had always craved was now something I no longer pursued. The greatest irony of all was that in trying to take from me what I had built, my family had actually freed me from the emotional chains that had bound me to them for so long. For the first time in my life, I could see them clearly without the fog of desperate hope for their approval clouding my vision. And in that clarity, I found a strength I never knew I possessed. The months following the betrayal were some of the most difficult of my life. Despite the successful business maneuvers and legal victories, the emotional aftermath was devastating. For weeks, I moved through my days like an automaton, focusing on work with laser precision, while feeling curiously numb in my personal life. My executive assistant Sarah finally intervened one evening when she found me still at my desk at 11 p.m. The office long emptied of other employees. "Elena," she said gently, You need help processing this. I've scheduled an appointment for you with Dr. Harlan tomorrow morning. I don't need therapy, I protested weakly. With all due respect, Sarah replied. You absolutely do, and it's already on your calendar, so you might as well go. Dr. Eleanor Harlan specialized in family trauma and betrayal. In our first session, I recounted the entire saga clinically, as if describing events that had happened to someone else. When I finished, she regarded me thoughtfully. You've told me what happened, she noted. But you haven't told me how you feel about it. That simple question broke the dam. For the first time since the night at Canlis, I truly wept. Not the controlled tears in the back of the car, but deep wrenching sobs that seemed to come from the very core of my being. They were never going to love me the way I needed them to, I finally managed to say. No matter what I achieved, no matter how much I gave them, it was never going to be enough. Over the following months, weekly sessions with Dr. Harlan helped me process not just the recent betrayal, but the lifetime of emotional neglect that had preceded it. I began to understand how my drive for success had been fueled in part by a desperate desire for parental approval that was always withheld. How I had constructed my entire identity around achievement and providing for others as a way to prove my worth. You are valuable beyond what you can give or achieve. Dr. Harlan reminded me in session after session until I finally began to believe it. As the psychological wounds began to heal, I turned my attention to rebuilding Datalink stronger than before. The company had weathered the storm remarkably well, our client base continuing to expand despite the internal turbulence. I implemented changes not just to our corporate structure, but to our company culture. We established more robust work-life balance policies. I started taking weekends off for the first time in years, encouraging my team to do the same. We created a sabbatical program for employees who had been with us for more than 3 years, allowing them time to recharge and pursue personal interests. These changes weren't just good for morale, they improved our productivity and creativity. Datalink flourished under this more balanced approach, our valuation climbing to $15 million by the end of the year. My personal healing journey was slower but equally transformative. I began to cultivate deeper friendships with people who demonstrated genuine care and support. Laura, my first investor, became a mentor and confidant. Alex and Emily, my earliest employees, had stood by me through the darkest period and emerged as true friends rather than just colleagues. Through them, I met others who entered my life without agenda or expectation. People who appreciated me for who I was, not what I could provide them. We gathered for dinner parties, hiking trips, and weekend getaways. Slowly, I built a chosen family that offered the unconditional support my biological one never had. Learning to trust again was perhaps the greatest challenge. Every kind gesture, every offer of help or support initially triggered suspicion. What did they want in return? What was their hidden agenda? Dr. Harlan helped me recognize these thoughts as protective mechanisms that no longer served me. Not everyone is your family, she pointed out. Not everyone will betray you. Vulnerability isn't weakness, it's courage. 2 years after the betrayal, Datalink had more than doubled in size. We now occupied 3 floors of our office building with satellite offices in Toronto and London. Our client list included Fortune 500 companies and government agencies. Industry awards lined the walls of our reception area. It was around this time that I received an unexpected email from Sophia. We had maintained minimal contact primarily regarding her children, whom I still supported through educational trusts. She had taken the job I'd helped her secure, and somewhat surprisingly had kept it for over a year. "Can we meet?" her message asked, simply. "There's something I need to say to you." We arranged to meet at a neutral location, a quiet cafe midway between our respective neighborhoods. She arrived on time, dressed modestly in business casual attire rather than the flashy outfits she had once favored. "Thank you for meeting me." She began, her usual brashness subdued. "I've been in therapy too. My counselor says I need to make amends as part of my recovery." I nodded but remained silent, waiting. I'm sorry, she continued, the words clearly difficult for her. What I did was wrong. Not just the shares thing, but everything before that too. Taking advantage of your generosity, never appreciating what you did for me and the kids. Her apology sounded rehearsed but sincere. Still, it came years too late, and after immeasurable damage. I appreciate you saying that, I replied carefully. But I don't think we can go back to how things were. I know, she acknowledged. I'm not asking for that. I just wanted you to know that I understand now what I threw away. Not just the money, but the relationship with someone who actually cared about me despite how awful I was. We talked for another hour more honestly than we ever had before. She shared her struggles with always feeling inadequate compared to me, how our parents had positioned us as competitors rather than allies from childhood. I spoke of my hurt at never receiving the recognition or support I craved from my family. It wasn't reconciliation exactly, but it was a kind of closure. We would never be close, but perhaps we could be civil, particularly for the sake of her children, who I still wanted in my life. My parents made similar overtures in the years that followed. My father, facing health issues that forced him to confront his mortality, reached out repeatedly. My mother sent cards and emails attempting to reestablish contact. I maintained polite but distant communication, unwilling to risk further pain by letting them close again. Forgiveness doesn't mean you have to let them back into your life, Dr. Harlan had advised. It means releasing the anger so it doesn't consume you. You can forgive without reconciling. This distinction proved crucial to my healing process. I worked on forgiving my family for my own peace of mind, not to rebuild relationships that had proven destructive. The anger and bitterness gradually subsided, replaced by a kind of detached compassion for people who had never learned to love without conditions or manipulation. Meanwhile, I found joy in mentoring the next generation of women entrepreneurs. I established a foundation that provided grants and guidance to women starting technology businesses, particularly those from disadvantaged backgrounds. Watching these women succeed, knowing I had contributed to their journey, brought a fulfillment that financial success alone never had. My personal life blossomed as well. After years of putting romance on hold, I allowed myself to open up to the possibility of partnership. I met Nathan, an architect with his own firm, at a charity event. Our relationship developed slowly, built on mutual respect and shared values rather than need or dependency. When he proposed after 2 years together, I found myself hesitating, not out of doubt about him, but fear of creating another family that might hurt me as my first one had. Family isn't just about blood, he reminded me. It's about choice. Every day, we choose each other. That's what makes it real. We married in a small ceremony surrounded by friends who had become family. Laura was my matron of honor. Alex and his wife sat in the front row where parents would traditionally be. My niece and nephew attended, now teenagers who spent regular time with me independent of their mother. As I look back now on the journey from betrayal to where I stand today, I recognize that what seemed like the worst moment of my life became the catalyst for the best parts of it. Being stripped of the illusion of family loyalty forced me to build something more authentic. The betrayal burned away the false connections, leaving space for genuine ones to grow. Datalink continues to thrive, now valued at over $30 million. I still lead the company, but have built a strong executive team that allows me time for other pursuits. My foundation has helped launch 27 women-led businesses. Nathan and I have created a home filled with the warmth and acceptance I never experienced growing up. The greatest lesson I've learned is that worth isn't measured by what others see in you, but what you know to be true about yourself. Success isn't about proving value to those who cannot or will not recognize it. It's about creating something meaningful and surrounding yourself with people who celebrate rather than exploit your strengths. If my story resonates with you, if you've ever been betrayed by those who should have supported you most, know this. It's possible to rebuild, not just to survive, but to thrive beyond what you thought possible. The people who try to diminish you don't determine your worth or your future. Only you have that power. Have you ever had to rebuild after a betrayal? How did you find the strength to move forward? Share your experiences in the comments below. And if this story helped you feel less alone in your journey, please like, subscribe, and share it with someone who might need to hear it. Remember, the family we choose is often stronger than the one we're born into. Thank you.